Fitzgerald and James Fitzgerald here. Cuz I don't know about you, but we need to create this podcast because I'm getting calls from my mates, clients, just everyone asking me everything about investment right now. So what do you say we do this weekly and create this our inaugural podcast?
I love it. I love it. Yep, we'll talk maybe the current affairs of the week with a lean towards investment and property.
Absolutely.
That's who we are.
Absolutely, that's who we are. You're based in Gold Coast, Brisbane. I'm in Melbourne, so I think between us we can give a pretty good overview of the Eastern Seaboard. So a bit of bias there with sprinkle some Adelaide in there. But look, let's talk investment and I guess current affairs. And you know, we've got. I mean, most of my questions from friends and the likes are all around real estate, but notably sort of rents, landlords. Everything to do with that. So we've got a guest, Andy, the CEO of Little Real Estate, on at the end of this, don't we? So that'll be, I mean, he'll be amazing. How many landlords have they got? 21,000?
Yeah, 21,000 and importantly, I think 380 staff, which would be, in this environment, everyone's isolating, working remotely. I'm sort of almost just as interested to know about how they're making that work as they are, you know, probably with the toughest job in Australia at the moment, managing these tenant-landlord relationships through coronavirus, So
we couldn't have a better guest. We couldn't have a better guest speaker on today. But I mean, cuz like you're the numbers man. We really can't start this podcast without discussing I guess everything investment related on COVID-19 because it is the elephant in the room.
It's everywhere.
I mean, how do you see the numbers at the moment? What are you seeing your end?
Well, look, I mean, my end, I'm in Queensland. We've got 1,001 cases. That's 3 new cases for the whole week, which is crazy. So it seems like Queensland really have got the tiger by the tail. I caveat that by saying that we're also fairly lax about all this. So it could be that we're not getting enough tests done. but you know, even Victoria and New South Wales, the sort of the epicenter of it, they're running at maybe 0.5%. This week over the last 7 days, and I think most importantly, Australia's at like 6,500 cases.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, America's what's America now? 670,000 cases. So they've got 100 times the cases of us, and sort of 15 times the population. Pretty much, we're beating every single country. Is long and short.
That's right. I feel really lucky to be Australian right now, and you know the greatest part is our economy is still ticking over in some regard. You know, we are not in complete shutdown. You know, construction's going. Housing employs 10% of Australians. You know, we've got a lot of hospitality that's unfortunately not operating to 100%, of course, but you know they've been able to facilitate sort of takeaway. So our economy is still ticking over. Is it ideal? No, but look at where our numbers are compared to the rest of the world. You know, on a per capita basis. Australia is a bloody great place to be generally, but, you know, particularly right now.
And I think, too, we saw the numbers in the Tuesday webinar. Australia has got the 4th highest amount of stimulus that the government has put into the economy per person, which, you know, is great. We're so fortunate, so blessed that our government acted so quickly. We're, I think, so blessed that the government, the federal government and the state governments have sort of been in lockstep the whole way. They've got the National Cabinet, which I think has been very effective. And most importantly, you know, there is a heap of help available to people if they have fallen on hard times.
That's right. I mean, you know, in our world of real estate, specifically, you know, property investors, the questions are around, you know, I guess renting and all that, and a lot of the stimulus package. What's the total? Because $200 billion is housing related, and you know it's a great time to. I mean, I sort of say that tongue in cheek, but you know, considering real estate investors, you know, are the most cushioned of all, and that's because housing is so important to our country. Undoubtedly, I mean, the stimulus packages, like you said, there's a 6-month moratorium on evictions. Fed Gov came out with that. Queensland and New South Wales, they were really quick to act. On the incentives, and of course we just saw Victoria come out, I think earlier this week. So I mean, there's a lot of stimulus available, and it really cushions us. A lot of clients, I don't know about you, but they're sort of asking, well, I guess why would I buy now, or what's going to happen now?
Yeah, so I think, the stimulus packages for those who are wanting to know or needing some help, there's $550 a week job seeker, $750 job keeper for employers to pass on to their staff. There's free childcare from the 6th of April. You can access super, $10,000 worth of super, which we're doing a special segment on in this Tuesday's webinar that's coming up. And there's a couple of others, you've sort of talked to them though. There's banks helping out with interest and principal holidays. And you're right, the big one for the week was the landlord incentives where, Queensland, New South Wales, and as I understand it now down your way in Victoria, offering a 25% discount on land tax provided it's passed on to their tenant, which, it all helps. And then Queensland, I know you and I have both got rental properties in Queensland. Queensland's been fantastic. They've gone one step further, offering $500 a week rental assistance for anyone who sort of has fallen on hardship during the month of April before those job seeker and job keeper payments kick in. So if you're in a spot of bother as a landlord, as an individual who's lost your job, there's many different ways that you can get some help today. So, I think they've just got to find out a way to do it.
That's right. I mean, look, it's more admin, cuz you got to roll up your sleeves and get on the phones and all that. But if they're there, you just got to do it.
We've clarified too landlord protection insurance. Maybe you want to talk to that. I believe the landlord protection insurance is covering people at the moment.
Well, you've got to be with the right. You've got to have the right insurance policy, of course. I mean, we do most of our homework, so most of our clients are covered. But you're absolutely covered if you're with the right firm.
Yeah, so big help. Yeah. And so
Oh, there we go. I was going to say, what's the agent feedback on the ground? I mean, some of my mates are agents as well. It's interesting to hear what you're seeing and feeling on the ground with the agents.
Look, you're right, and I won't talk property management because we're going to get probably the best person in Australia to talk to property management. But I guess from a sales point of view, the numbers are this: no one's selling, so their problem as a business is they can't get listings because no one needs to sell.
Yeah,
and that's because the banks are helping. There's less buyers, but as I understand it, the rule used to be 10 people inquiring on a property to get one contract. They're now working off 3. So there's less buyers, but they're serious buyers. My feedback on the ground is they're still selling. There's just not as much supply. There's not a drop in the market, but there's not an increase. It's sort of just treading water for a bit. That's what I'm hearing.
I mean, it's funny because the journalists have got nothing to write about right now in one respect because people don't need to sell their house for 25,000 less whatever than they owe on it because they don't have to make repayments if they've lost their job. So what an incredible time to be in. I mean, it just gives more certainty around real estate and housing in this country, and I guess how important it is. How important it is. I think you and I have talked, the opportunity that presents itself not only for under 30s, but I guess just for anyone with the right attitude right now. But, that Bernard Salt article that you sent me last week, that was one of the best. What do you say? Preparing the nation for the post-apocalyptic world. I know you love Bernard Salt.
I love the word apocalyptic. That got my attention. I love Bernard Salt. You're right. I read The Australian every day. He puts in a weekly column, sometimes 2 at the moment. So, Bernard Salt, for those who don't know, is probably one of the best demographers in Australia. He's the managing director of the Demographers Group. Recommend anyone read his article. It came out on the 25th of March in The Australian. And, I loved he uses data and he uses numbers. The numbers I liked were those numbers around population. He talked and looked at the post-World War I and post-World War II numbers on immigration and population, with his, theme being that, following those world wars and even the Spanish flu, people flock to the safe English-speaking Australia, which, he's got some numbers there where our immigration numbers, we get about 200,000 immigrants a year. He's talking, the equivalent back then, post-World War One and World War Two, was that the numbers would be 400,000 a year. So our immigration would double if we had something similar to what occurred at that time. So, you need to read the article. I'm not going to sort of do it enough justice on this forum. Maybe we put a link to it in the podcast, but it's the best article I've seen in the last, probably, in fact, for the whole year, particularly around, the pandemic and coronavirus. It's the best commentary, best article I've seen.
And supported by data. But you got to love
Correct.
that.
100%. There's lots of data. He talks about the founding of Landlords and Westfield and how they happened to occur over, and off the back of those pandemics and crises in the past. So it was motivating as well.
That's exactly right. And I guess that kind of leads us into our next topic, because Bernard Saul talks about the rise of prosperity and sunny optimism. I freaking love those sayings. And I guess, because we're under 30, both of us right now, you not for so long, sorry about that. But let's bask in it while we can. Do you think we are at an opportunistic time, being under 30 or just living through this pandemic? Well, what do you think?
Look, a lot of people are doing it hard. I don't want to sort of, forget that probably 10% of the people in my circle, family and friends, are doing it tough at the minute. So there's the backdrop of that. But at the same time, I think, I have to say, don't get me wrong, I won't get to do my 30th birthday, as you've pointed out. Had a big birthday planned. I won't have to do that. That'll have to be on Zoom or something. We probably won't get married this year. So there's a couple of downsides. I was getting married in October, but what will happen is, I think, I'm so lucky. I bought my principal place of residence last year. That has been an absolute godsend, because I'm just, I've kept my mortgage repayments up and the interest rates have dropped. So I've got a unique opportunity there to really smash down my debt on that. And I think, as a 30-year-old, give or take, in this environment, to experience this at a young age, and sort of probably be the main beneficiary of the optimism and opportunity that sits on the other side of all this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I think we're in the box seat. I think we're going to see a real spike. You've called it. You coined it very early on, the slingshot effect. We even call you young slingers around the office, because I agree. I agree with everything that you say around the fact that it will slingshot out the other side. And we are fortunately, just because of our age and position, we're going to hit it with a bit of momentum.
Yeah, look, I share that sentiment, absolutely. And look, it is a metaphor for life, that it's all about mindset. But, understanding and knowing these numbers and data that we're seeing, record low interest rates. Did you mention 15% first home buyers? That's quite high. It just shows that there's opportunity right now, and you've just got to make the most of it. You and I have got a couple of friends and family members that, were probably sniffing around looking to buy their first property around Christmas, and now they've gone, well, geez, we might actually make that happen right now. The RBA dropped interest rates. Now's the time to go. And one of my friends actually just bought a couple of weeks ago. So it's an opportunistic time, and
why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Like a $750,000 mortgage today would be $200 a week cheaper than it was 6 months ago. So
that's it.
That's huge.
That's it.
Why wouldn't you?
That's it. It's a cheesy saying, but pressure creates diamonds. When you're pushed to something that you're not used to, you think like you don't normally. So I think that's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing. So to be a first home buyer or a home buyer or a young person today, so much opportunity. So much
and I'm
opportunity.
and look, I agree, and I know that I'm very curious to ask Andy what his view is on this. But I think inevitably every single business in Australia, every single household in Australia is going to come out of this pandemic leaner and meaner. We're all looking at our budgets and expense lines at the moment, and we're eliminating anything that sort of maybe wasn't necessary. So we're all going to come out leaner and meaner and better for it. And it's forcing us to innovate and do things, quicker and embrace things quicker than we probably otherwise would have.
Mm-hmm. Prosperity post-pandemic. How do you like that one?
I like that one. Where'd you get that from?
I just made it up.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, young slingers with an absolute cracker on a Friday. What is it, Friday the 17th here?
Thank you. Hey, Kaz, I can see we've got Andy on the line, so we should probably dial him in and grill him on the rentals.
Who wants the first question, you or me?
Yeah, you, go.
Okay. Hey, Andy, I might, Alex agreed to give me first question. And I've heard rumours that you might be the only business executive in Australia who came up with a pandemic plan. Any truth?
No. A complete and absolute coincidence. So,
you want to maybe talk us through that? Because it is, it's so. I recall we caught up probably a couple of months ago before coronavirus was a thing, and you were talking about, the challenges to try and create, opportunities to attract great talent in working situations that are maybe a little bit more flexible, which obviously has helped in this instance or situation that we find ourselves in. So do you want to maybe just give us the background on that?
Yeah, sure. So about 18 months ago, we introduced a number of initiatives that we thought would help attract talent to us versus the industry, but also just put try and get a different group of people applying to get into what we think is a great industry. So we were fortunate enough to implement what we call flexible working, and it was kind of under the banner of work from anywhere. Now, clearly, you've got some restrictions on that. Receptionists need to be in offices, but as a rule, we found that a lot more efficiencies and productivity came from people working from home. And we also found through that attraction piece that we were picking up really good talent that had young families, and the flexibility allowed them to work when they needed to work and be a parent when they needed to be a parent. So it's worked really well for us. It took time to implement, and it took quite a bit of time for the habit to be embraced. One of the huge upsides of this pandemic, if there are many, I don't think there are, but one of them for us is that, the population in our workforce that weren't that keen to work from home now understand a little bit more where the benefits from that come from. And since we've been overlaid with homeschooling, we're very lucky that we had that in place at the time that we did.
Very Silicon Valley view for you guys. I really loved it. I actually, when I heard about it, we sort of tried to make some changes here in our workplace. So definitely a positive movement that Little have created there. Andy, is there something that sort of stood out or wowed you the most during this COVID-19 situation?
There's been a couple of things. One is the brilliance of humanity. Some of the things that we've seen from landlords have been really uplifting. And an example of that would be we had a landlord put a single mum into their apartment. Their apartment had been vacant for a couple of weeks, so the electricity and utilities were in the owner's name. And without any prompting, the owner gave us a call and said, "Tell the tenant that I'll be picking up the costs of all of the utilities this year, and wish you the best." So from a humanity point of view, I've probably got 20 or 30 of those stories.
Wow.
The other thing I've loved is that we haven't seen the opposite of that. Everyone seems to be very community focused at the moment, looking out for each other, which is wonderful. And from that perspective, that again is uplifting. The other thing that I've really enjoyed my team doing is embracing the challenge of what we're doing. And it may sound a little bit, I don't know, it might sound a bit dicky, but, there's a real opportunity for all of us to come out as better people through this process by understanding what we're capable of doing and how we can work within the community to do best for the community. So I've just asked that we all embrace the fact that this is a difficult time, but what we learn about each other and what we learn about ourselves during this period, it'll be 10 years of business as usual to get the same learnings that we're getting at the moment. So from that perspective, they're probably the two things that have wowed me the most.
And so, Andy, we've been doing the Tuesday webinar series for the last month. The most common question that we're getting is around rent arrears, around vacancies. So I want to just go to the numbers briefly. You are CEO of the biggest property management company that I know of inside of Australia, 21,000 odd properties, maybe more, 380 staff, which is probably even maybe even a bigger challenge at this moment. I think that's the number. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know, what are your numbers around, I guess the main KPIs of your business, but particularly around rent default, arrears and deferrals at the moment compared to normal business?
Yeah, so those numbers are pretty good, James. The only thing I'd qualify is that privately owned. There's probably some franchises out there. If you add up all their properties, you've probably got more than us. But yeah, you're pretty much spot on. So just to give you a little bit of a perspective from comparing March with February. So we normally run our arrears at around about 2%. So when we define arrears, it's 30 plus days in arrears. And at the moment, New South Wales in the end of February was at 2.3%. New South Wales is now at 3.5%. We've got about 3,000 properties in New South Wales. Vic was 2.2 and it's grown to 2.8. With that 0.6 increase on an 11,000 property book, that's about 60 odd properties. So not material between the end of February and the end of March. Queensland was unaltered between the end of Feb and March at about 5.4% of the book. The difference in Queensland to the other states is Queensland has a preference to pay rent weekly as a tenant, and therefore our arrears are always higher because you've got 4 opportunities to be behind in rent in a month. So nothing major from February to March, but of course the pandemic didn't really take hold until the latter part of March and into this period here. So what we've seen is we have what's called a rental support form. So if a tenant rings up and says they'd like some rental assistance, we get them to complete a form, and it's on the basis that we need to be able to have as much information to present their case to the landlord, and for the landlord to have all of the detail that they need so that they can make a decision on what they want to do. Now, since we started that about probably 3 weeks ago, we've had about 650 requests for rental adjustments, and 96% of those are affected by the coronavirus, either as being unemployed or their hours have been reduced. That, to me, was a really, really interesting stat, that nearly 100% of the people that are asking for rental assistance have genuinely been affected by the pandemic that we're working through. So this...
and you said 650? Did I hear that right? 650 out of 21,000. It's not a lot.
Yeah, so we've got 22,000 properties. 667 is about 3 and a bit percent. So from that side of things, marginal. But the thing that I like is that this fear out there that people are just going to take this as an opportunity just not to pay rent. Yeah. We're not actually seeing that because they have been impacted, and it's only reasonable that they do seek some assistance. It's interesting. We offer, like, our advice to landlords is defer because that's best for them commercially, and it helps out the tenant through this financial hardship period. So we offer a 3 or 6 month deferral option for the tenant. And at the moment, that's as close to 50-50 as you can imagine. So, again, the tenants aren't looking or hoping for an extended reduction because they know they've got an obligation to pick it up at the back end anyway. But I think it goes to a little bit of hope that this won't go on forever and that, 3 months help is probably all I need.
And so that would be a deferral as in discounted or completely waived? Because there's some stimulus available to the tenants, obviously, as well.
Yeah, 100%. So no one's asking for no rent, and it's a conversation around, well, if you can't pay your rent in full, what can you pay? And then we built some modelling for our property managers where they just plug in, when the lease expires, et cetera, and a number pumps out, and we share that in an agreement between the landlord and the tenant as to what the obligations are. The other important thing about the deferment is when it comes to claiming for insurance, for landlord insurance.
Mm. So, I mean, like, what are the insurances in place if, the tenant just decides not to pay during COVID? What kind of landlord protection is there?
So if you've got some form of, and I've got to be really clear here, I'm not authorised to advise on landlord insurance. I don't have a licence to do that. Mm-hmm. So this is just some general knowledge that I can share with you. Is the landlord insurance is impacted in a number of different ways. If you were to reduce the rent, so if the landlord agrees to reduce rent, the landlord then can't claim the difference in payments. So if you say I'm using an extreme example. If you reduce rent from $500 a week to $250 a week, you can't recoup the extra $250. And the reason that is that you've entered an agreement with, two parties have entered into an agreement. Mm. However, if the tenant then continued to default on the newly agreed amount, then this is from a frequently asked question form provided by a company called EBM, then you could actually claim the $250 a week payments that weren't made. If you put the rent on hold, then if the tenant doesn't catch up on the payments, normal protocols kick in, and it would then fall under loss of rent, and the policy would respond. So if you said, all right, we'll reduce it from $500 to $250 for 3 months, and then you're back up to $500, and you've got to catch up on that $250 benefit that you had. If they don't pay that, then you can claim that as well.
It just sounds like it's a real horses for courses type of answer, and I guess, reading between the lines, if I'm the landlord, I'm probably picking up the phone if I've got an issue and asking my property manager and seeking some guidance, because you guys would be across a lot of different arrangements in a lot of different suburbs at the moment. And, correct me if I'm wrong, is the advice just to pick up the phone if you have got a tenant who's doing something here and just map out a bit of a plan with your property manager?
For rental reductions and deferrals?
Yeah, and in consideration of your landlord protection policy.
Yeah. So the reason I chose the EBM fact sheet is I like EBM. They were very good to us as an organisation. When we started working with them, there was a couple of clauses in their contracts that we didn't like. Just a really simple example was they had a clause in there that said, if you cannot see the physical impact of a break-in, so if there's not a window broken, a door kicked in or something along those lines, then there was no break-in. So we got them to change that clause because something like 80% of break-ins these days, you've got no evidence of a break-in. So we like dealing with partners that are happy to accommodate. The other thing, they didn't have pet insurance in there. So they put a $75,000 coverage for pet insurance. I'm not spooking EBM. It's just a couple of stories to see how those things go. But really, when it comes to your landlord insurance, as a general comment, it's not affected by the pandemic. But if you want definitive answers around that, it's probably not your PM to call. It would be your insurance provider to have a conversation with them because it's specific to the contract. And again, we wouldn't be across all of the contracts that are in the marketplace.
It sounds like, it's really a case-by-case basis, I suppose, not a one-size-fits-all for any landlord tenant. So, look, everything helps, for us to learn all the things that are available to us as landlords and, of course, our tenants, it all helps. Eddie, just to skip ahead a little bit, talking about looking forward 12, 24, 36 months from now, what kind of innovations do you think there'll be in property management? I mean, You guys are already sort of ahead of the curve on innovation, and I know your technology is, I guess, what's helped you guys be so successful. But what are some new innovations that you think you might see out of this?
So we use a software product called Agent Plus, which the little group owns, and that's going through a full rewrite as we speak. So that's, into the future going to be launched. And I think what we'll see over the next 12 to 18 months, and James, you remember my background's banking. So
I do, yeah.
The thing that I think we'll see more of, particularly with the work that Agent Plus are doing, is tenants will start to use their property management app as they use their bank app. Right? So the physical connection, which has moved from banking to technology, will actually occur in our industry as well, more and more, because a tenant doesn't have time necessarily to ring their PM, and their PM's not necessarily there to take the call. So technology can play a huge role. And to think of actually walking back into a bank today and asking to transfer money from one account to another, it just doesn't happen.
No.
The other thing I think that we'll see, and we've been working on this for a little while, but we haven't got to where we want to get to yet, is I think we'll start to segregate the relationship conversations with the landlord and the at-property services that the PM currently does. I think we need to have specific experts on the property routine inspection. We already have experts for leasing. We already have experts for BDM. But I think we'll see a split between the conversations with PMs and landlords and them becoming more valuable to the landlord, and a different group of people doing the at-property work. And I think that'll bring expertise, because at the moment, the industry is one of conflict. So you've got a PM dealing with a landlord about fractious issues that are associated with a tenant, and also then needing to be an expert on property inspections, body corporate stuff, whatever it might be. And all of that conflict can actually dissipate if you've got a landlord and a relationship manager, PM type person working together on the important matters that needs to be addressed each day, having the tenants interacting through technology, which takes out some friction points, and having those experts on the ground doing what they need to do. The industry as a whole is a very, very large industry and moves slowly. And that's a byproduct of the way that it's structured through franchises. And also, we're a little bit different in the sense that we're a property management company that sells really well versus a franchise, which is a property salesperson that might have a property management business tacked on at the back end of the business.
Just on that, Alex, and I'm sort of going off topic a little bit, but I do want to just pause on that, because I think you've touched on a really good point. And Alex and I were saying earlier in the podcast that, I think that every one of us, whether it's a company or a household, we're becoming leaner and meaner through this pandemic because we're forced to. We're also forced to, I think, adapt, innovate, and embrace, technologies or different ways of doing things ahead of when we normally would, and be that, Zoom. I know you guys use, Vimeo and a few other platforms that are enabling you to communicate in these times. Is there anything that you might have already been working on that specifically, you think has a faster time frame now to become mainstream in your business?
Certainly virtual tours. So for a weekend, we had a panic here in Victoria based on the fact that the government came out and banned open for inspections, both for leasing and for sales. So
I know, right?
Yeah, and that got turned around pretty quickly, because the industry, does have really good bodies that are designed to look after landlords and tenants. So virtual tours, we've brought in a lot earlier so that we can reduce the community impact of having people travel from property to property. So if they have the virtual tour, they can understand whether they like the property or not before they actually physically.
And what are you doing? On that note, what are you doing with keys? Like, how do you, because you guys obviously have to store everyone's keys to their houses.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with those in this time?
So we're looking at working out if there's a financial way that we can transfer keys across to a keypad system, or if we can store keys in different environments for those people that need to do the app property inspections and that kind of stuff. It's funny, the branch network as it works today, there's only 2 people that come into one of our offices. The first person's a tradie, and they're there to pick up the keys, and the second person's a tenant, and they come in twice during the term of their lease. Once to pick up their keys and once to give the keys back. So as we get through and understand the technology that's coming out of a number of different places around the fact that I want some technology that just sends a code to someone for 15 minutes so that they can get into the property and get out of the property and do what they need to do, and just save time, effort for everyone on that whole process. The other alternative is that we look at alternate storage points. So, for example, I had an early discussion with Australia Post. Australia Post constitutionally need to keep all of the post offices open. They can't go and shut them. The Constitution doesn't allow it. So they're actually wanting some extra foot traffic to get through their stores. So my early discussion with those guys, and I've got to admit it hasn't gone terribly far.
How about 21,000 keys?
But it's not Australia Post fault that it hasn't. It would be that we could just store keys at their site, and that would make access far easier. You could do that at 7-Elevens, you could do it at Coles, you could do it at Woolies, you could do it at Wilson storage areas. So I think we'll see a change in that, and even in London there's a group called Foxtons. Even those guys who are really, really keen on branches and did a whole revamp of their branches about 3 years ago. They just recognise that they're not used as they used to be used. So, I think the life of that corner office is coming to a close.
Andy, I love it. I love how innovative Little are and forward thinking, and just your overall view of everything right now is just kind of inspiring, I suppose. I mean, look, we'll start to wrap up here, but any sort of last words or advice for landlords and or tenants in the spirit of prosperity post pandemic? Any advice?
Well, I think we're all pretty keen to go back to a pub. So I think I think there is going to be some post pandemic prosperity. Look, I think at the pub. Look, I just think that as a community, we've both got, so tenants and landlords, we've both got obligations that we need to fulfil. And our leaders have asked us to do that in a positive way and come to some conclusions that equally shares the burden of the process that we're going through.
True.
I think our guys, my advice to my guys is to, talk about the commerciality of an arrangement, but also when you're dealing with tenants and landlords, it's got to be done with care and compassion, because it's difficult times and there's some real anxiety out there in the marketplace. I think the other thing is for us as a business, and this is again a little bit, whatever. I would love at the end of the process for the landlord, when we ask them, how did we perform getting you through the process? I just really hope that we do a good enough job that the landlord says, we're very grateful that you were there for us. And I'm also very, very hopeful that the tenant will turn to us and say thanks for helping us through a difficult time, because we have to facilitate the community spirit through this process. Ultimately, we take the instruction of the landlord. But if we can facilitate, that sharing of the difficulty, then I'd be really proud of us as an organisation.
Look, I think we're all discovering what each other and ourselves are capable of at the moment. Maybe stuff that we didn't think we were capable of. Certainly, social distancing, I didn't think we were this capable of doing it. But we seem to be going all right. So look, Andy, I know that you're a very busy man, and we're so lucky to have had your time today. I know that, there's a lot of people with tough jobs in Australia at the moment, and you are one of them, particularly the last couple of weeks with all the moving pieces floating around and the fact that you guys operate on such a scale. So once again, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing what you have. You've gone over and above in terms of sharing a lot of stuff about your business and what you're seeing, which I know is going to really benefit property owners listening to this. So thank you very much, Andy.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Andy.
James. Thanks, Alex.
Geez, cuz we've really jam-packed our first podcast, but Andy was really incredible. Most uplifting CEO I've spoken to.
Yeah, correct. And I think too, the bit that I forgot to bring back up, because he talked about it before we got to record there, but he said their rental arrears have gone up from 14 days to 17 days, which is very marginal, really.
Marginal.
So they're doing a great job to keep on top of all these things for landlords, as is every property manager at the moment, but particularly those guys. Yeah, he was great.
Absolutely. And look, guys, we'll talk more as well in our upcoming webinars that we've got next week. We'll chuck a link in our post for this one so that anyone listening, you can hear more about landlords, what we've got, on our webinars and stuff like that. When are they next week?
So we've got the Tuesday and Wednesday next week. They're similar formats, offering the two different time slots, and we're continuing with, I think, last week's theme. We're going to be interviewing some local agents on the ground, one in, I think it's Ray White, Castle Hill, and Ray White Aspley. We'll be interviewing those guys and getting their on-the-ground feedback, which will be good for those living in Sydney and Brisbane.
Awesome. And if anyone's listening and they want a more specific strategy or even to talk to one of us, then you're obviously more than welcome to. James, I know you're the same as me. We're pretty open people, so please touch base with us. We'll provide our emails in the link as well. And we will see you same time next week. What do you reckon, Cuz?
I'm looking forward to a weekend of a lot of exciting nothing.
Me too.
Which is no different for you, but I actually normally get out and do stuff, but that's all right.
You can only gurney the house once. For the second time, the wall starts coming off. So.
All right, TGIF, hey?
TGIF. See you guys next week.
See ya. Bye.